find at the university. It's not the hardest, believe me. My home is in Rutherford, and if you ever get around Rutherford College, you know what a mess it is. It was designed as a prison, and you're never meant to leave it. So anyway, thanks for coming. Congratulations on finding the room. It's my pleasure to introduce this panel on media discourse and ideology. So we have 4 speakers today, and so we'll take the presentations in turn, 20 minutes each. I'll give you a little sign when you have 5 minutes left. I will start with Manu Brugman, who will be our first presenter. I'll introduce the others as we go along. Victor, do you want to make your way to the panel? The floor is yours. You have 20 minutes.
Hi. I'm a historian, and if I was going to ask every one of you to describe this picture to somebody who hasn't seen it before in a short essay, I'd get 10 different answers, and everything single one would be right, which is kind of the way history works. We have this really big mess that is called the past, and we try to make sense of it, and every single story is different, and this is my way of making sense of the hippie movement. I call it Hippies, Wales, and the Age of Aquarius. Now, I am a marine biologist by training originally, and I was really fed up with my subject at the end of my bachelor's degree because all we did was basically plot how the environment deteriorates and do nothing against it. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go to PR. And this is actually a very good quote I remember by the Sea Shepherds, somebody from a TV series, and they said, how can Japanese people kill and eat whales? They've got brains the size of cars. Now, this is a human brain and pilot whale brain and elephant brain, really, they're not the size of cars. However, these people spend their lives, risk their lives in the Antarctic to preserve whales, yet their understanding is 0. However, I think every single one of you could explain to you the greenhouse effect, so you understand it, but probably nobody thinks twice about flying to Aruba if I offer you a free ticket. So my original question is, why do we love whales and neglect global warming? And this is how I stumbled into the subject. It is only on reflecting about it afterwards that I realized actually this has to do something with social movements. Now, you can study something by discipline. So a sociologist might study the hippie movement and come up with his disciplinary answer, or somebody from the history of science might study whale conservation. But as I said, my subject was I want to understand why we love whales, and I transgressed a few disciplines by doing that because I approached it very naively. So here we've got my subject, the construction of whales, but yeah, let's have a start. So we didn't always think of whales as these really beautiful, pretty creatures. This is the Christian Judaic origin of Leviathan. Then we've got the story of Jonah and the big fish, or Jonah and the whale. Here we've got Moby Dick, and how that relates to manliness and overcoming the horrible white whale as a token of empowering yourself and those things. And even to the 1940s in mainstream media, Pinocchio was being eaten by a monstrous whale. So the image of the whale was always really, really negative, until it then changed radically, and 15 years later, we have Flipper. And parents give their kids whale song CDs to make them calmer or more intelligent or whatever. And then Free William, obviously my favorite whale, the fail whale on Twitter. Yes, what has happened, and looking back on my subject, I think this is a manifestation of a social movement that happened, and this is what I want to talk to you about. Now, I did my degree at the history department, so I'm going to take this historical approach. Prior to the 1950s, people had a very physicalist understanding of the world. That means Max Planck in the 19th century was told he shouldn't bother with physics because all that's left for you is fine-tuning, because people thought we have all the formula, we just need to know where every single atom in the universe is, fling it into a computer, and we can predict the future. Then Einstein came along with quantum physics. However, this thinking really stayed with us. It meant that basically inevitability is a consequence of that, because if everything is dominated by physical laws, there's no way of escaping them, and our future is kind of determined. Which, considering what happened in the 20th century, is not a very nice prospect. And people were flabbergasted and horrified at the prospect that something as the Holocaust, fascism, and the wars were an inevitability, and they didn't want to case that philosophy, so they were looking for something else. And this physicalist thinking is more so reflected even in science. So we've got this guy, Lilly, who is an American Army-funded physicist, and medical doctor, and he was doing research for the American Army. First started off with pilot stress monitoring, how you accelerate the body, what's going to happen if you accelerate really quickly, are they just going to die? Nobody knew at that time. So he was monitoring the physical stress. He was also concerned with spy detection, so being a doctor, they also thought maybe he's going to find something in Soviets that is just different, maybe they're just physically different, what makes somebody become a communist. And as a physicist, he was also concerned with torpedo design, so he studied dolphins for their aqua and aerodynamic properties. But his main subject became psychology. So he did neuroelectrical exploration. That basically means you cut open the brain and poke it with an electric stick and see what happens, and you try to plot the mammalian brain. They did it with dogs and then frogs and later dolphins because they've got a bigger brain and it's easier to poke them. Chemical neurology, where you just cut open snails that have massive neurons and it's very easy to dissect them, trying to understand the chemistry that happens in neurons, with the intention of producing a truth serum. So basically something you inject into spies and they just suddenly tell you all the state secrets. Also, he was, in his research, was involved in supercomputers, basically, to crack Soviet spies again, Soviet codes. And I think all of this physical approach to the brain tells us that computer science and psychology really were the same thing at that time. Also identified by Pavlov, who basically turned the dog into a machine. I read about it, do that, and I read it. Yeah, and Lawrence, who basically, if you breathe a goose and show your face, that's what happens. Very deterministic thinking as well. So this is a physicalism. Now, they were obviously very invasive methods, and many of Lilly's research subjects, i.e. dolphins, died. And that is the crucial year where Lilly had a very personal experience. So he ended up killing another one of his dolphins, and with his last breath, it made a few sounds, and he was absolutely convinced and certain that this dolphin spoke with him in English, and maybe asked him why did he do that or anything, and he was convinced that he experienced interspecies communication in English, literally. And he gave a talk at the American Psychiatric Association. It's a very, very important association and a very important conference. I know that psychologists here, they know that's a big deal if you claim to psychiatrists that you hear a dolphin talk. Anyway, he decided to quit the army and became a self-funded researcher interested in the communication of dolphins to see whether they have consciousness, because if they can talk, it means they have a language, it means they have consciousness, and how they think. And he switched from this literally opening up brains to qualitative research and qualitative methods, kind of alike to anthropology or ethnography, and that was from 1960s onwards. And he observed them, literally. He looked, what do they do? How do they interact? He investigated what do they do when I go and swim with them, what do they do when I feed them, and yeah, interaction, interspecies and intraspecies. He also used chemical exploration, but not in the sense of I'll open them and see how they work, but I give them LSD, I give them ecstasy, I give them various drugs and see what do they do. That what you can see here is an isolation tank. I want you all basically to imagine a massive lukewarm bathtub filled with salt water so you don't feel gravity. It is warm, it is dark, you don't hear anything, and you spend time in there. An hour, 2 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours a week. I don't know how long it takes, but it certainly will give you very, very serious and very strong hallucinations just because your brain is deprived of any sensation and it just entertains itself. Now, and that is this kind of approach to anthropology of oneself. So basically he gets high on himself, because again, LSD kind of might affect your thinking, so he wants to have like the pure thoughts of the essence of your mind. And coming from there is, if dolphins live in a medium that gives us humans such paranoia, they must have very, very seriously deep minds, literally, because they live in salt water and have no gravity whatsoever. So he got really interested more and more, and he postulated a few things. He came up with the idea that dolphins are intelligent in the sense of that we are intelligent. We have kind of consciousness. They have ability and willingness to communicate in between them as well as with us. And it's only we, with our thinking of like nationality, race, identity, language, culture, we are not able to understand them, but they actually are, and we just need to grow up to get up to their standards, really, to communicate with them. And they have very deep minds, for the reason I just told you. And he went and sold his research, because obviously it was very expensive. I mean, he had to have like an entire SeaWorld for himself, really, with massive elevators where the dolphins had been carried from levels to levels, and I could show you the plans. Anyway, so he went to NASA, for example, and said, I fund my research, I'm interested in communication of these really weird creatures. It is a dry run to see what happens if we encounter aliens, which was something they were seriously scared of at that time. He went to the US Army and said, if I manage to understand the dolphin language, it's going to be a really good dry run to understand dolphin, Soviet spy code, Soviet communication. So he seriously thought that it's easier to decrypt the dolphin language than Soviet encryption. And the funny thing is, he got the funding. They believed him. So he was really, really, really successful at selling his research. And also, he met the director of Flipper, invited him to his research center, as well as Feynman, Fermi, I said Sagan already, and any big name in physics, he was there. Also, Carl Sagan founded the Order of the Dolphin, which was basically a Freemason/scientist society, and they came up with the Green Bank formula, or the formula where basically how you determine how many intelligent civilizations there are in the universe. And he chaired this club of physicists, and he was a medical doctor, and he chaired under the title of the Grand Dolphin. This is a picture from a paper that has been published by an astronomer who said, well, we should turn our satellites into this. They make good ambassadors when aliens come by and say, oh, they like dolphins. They must, they can't be too bad. And again, a picture of a contemporary oscillation tank. And hippies went bananas for those ideas. I mean, you can see how they really like the idea of free love, because dolphins have been observed to masturbate, to have same-sex intercourse, which, before that, hippies were just a bunch of freaks. But if you have like an intelligent, wonderful species that lives following these principles of harmony, intelligence, social interaction, they absolutely love Louis and his dolphins. Also, the dolphin language is something you can actually hear. You can hear them how they and everything. But what you must realize, they don't have, what they thought is, they didn't have anything to talk about but social reactions. They don't have no clothes or money or bank accounts or borders. So all their communication must revolve around social interaction. And that was like a scientific justification for the hippie utopia of like freedom, peace, harmony, and so forth. And dolphins really became kind of a noble savage, the original inhabitants of the planet. And yes, everything they were like the tribe of nature and calm social friend. Basically, anything you can think about, we think about dolphins, arose during that time. I really like the idea of sexual liberation in this species and how they strongly identified with that principle. And this is really where it kicked off, where the hippie movement became ingrained with like the serene, how they really like Aquarius, Atlantis. Here, there's Donovan's record, and you can see here the swastika on the album, basically just a statement how the hippie movement wants to reclaim symbols that have been abused by by nationalism, by fascism, by saying, no, this is much older symbol, and we're just going to cleanse it of its past by giving it back the original meaning, again, going back to serenity and the old. Woodstock, the festival, everybody knows Woodstock, originally was called an Aquarian Exposition by the Woodstock Art and Music Fair. It's only now they're called Woodstock. At that time it was an Aquarian Exposition. The hippie anthem, Atlantis, and I don't know if you ever get a chance to look at lyrics, I think they're beautiful, how they just hope for this age of Aquarius, this new age of harmony, peace, and everything. And tripping with Skama is stressing this fact that cetaceans have been so strongly affiliated with drugs. If you look at the LSD literature at that time, they told you that if you take LSD, you will encounter kind of a dolphin or a whale that will guide you through your trip. So that's what this picture stands for, LSD and cetaceans. People listened to this, they bought this CD, it's been published by Lilly himself, of whale sounds, and just sat there, listened to it, and tried to understand the universe, tried to understand other cultures. And this is probably something that fascinates me the most. This is the golden record. And it's been put onto the Voyager sonde that just travels through space. And it's got sounds of the Earth on it, volcanoes, rainforests, rivers, whatever. And in the second part, it's got a message by the American president and by all the United Nations ambassadors. And it's been compiled by Carl Sagan. Obviously, there are whale sounds on it, but whereas the US the ambassadors only have like hello, guten Tag, guten Morgen, bonjour, there's 3 minutes of whale songs, and they are amongst the ambassadors, not amongst the sounds of nature. Again, stressing this idea that once, if there's an alien that ever finds that record, they will probably be able to understand the whale language because it's absolute, it's natural, it's unculturally tainted. And again, if we as humans manage to understand them, or we know that we should cherish them, we can't be so bad. So at that time, the Marine and the space race were one thing really, because excelling in one meant superiority in the other. Because if you think you can, if that would have happened, you know, if we really would have encountered aliens, they thought generally that they had the advantage of the Soviets. So it was a nationalistic or a national pride idea, and that's why it's been so heavily funded and everything. So yeah, I think this rebranding is my way of making sense of the hippie movement, and I told you why I was looking at this in the first place. And for me, it is the effort of this one man who was desperately looking for a lot of funding and probably genuinely believed what he promoted, and how he pretty much on his own, by convincing people, by hitting the zeitgeist at that time, managed to rebrand cetaceans. And that's what absolutely fascinated me. And yeah, that was my thesis I wrote 2 years ago, and once I got back to that subject, I really fell in love with it again. And that's pretty much all I've got to say. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll move straight to the second talk. So this is Gulin Kehan. Did I say that correctly? And you're still talking about